Life opened a secret portal that changed everything just when she was ready to give up. She held on to her values while the world mocked her. Love betrayed her, money slipped through her fingers, and motherhood seemed like a cruel joke. Will her virtue finally bloom, or will the world win? Stay till the end to find out. From a very young age, Amara knew what it meant to go without. Born into the humble household of Mr. and Mrs. Eziora. They lived in a rural town. Her mother was a trader and her father a farmer. Amara was taught at an early age to work hard and uphold good morals. The quiet strength of her parents, who worked tirelessly to give her a shot at a better life, was not taken lightly by Amara. She loved her parents so much and had promised them she would make them proud. Her beauty, warm brown eyes, full lips, and radiant skin was never adorned with luxury, but it glowed with dignity. She often walked miles to school with her books tucked under her arm, ignoring the whispers of her high school classmates and the stares that reminded her she didn't belong. Yet, Amara studied with fierce determination, clutching tightly to the belief that something better waited for her. She was the best in her class and had represented her school at many competitions and won every one of them. She stood out in many ways from her peers. She was content with what she had, even though she did not have so much. Her peers were equally from the same background as her, but they couldn't live with the little they had. They lived recklessly as long as they were making money. Many times, her peers had tried every means to get Amara to do the things they do, but Amara stood her ground. So, they settled on teasing her. The teasing and name-calling gets to her, but she acts like she is not moved by their behavior towards her. Deep in her heart, she contemplated whether to join them. After all, she was beautiful too, and barely had enough. Amara shares her challenges with her mother, and her mother will always encourage her to live a good life. It never pays to lead a reckless life, said her mother. Those words stayed with her, especially on the days when her peers mocked her for living a godly life. She decided that she couldn't have those girls as her friends, as they mocked, rather than support and respect her decision. She never judged, nor mocked them in return. Rather, she encouraged them to live a good life, to attract God's blessings. One evening, after school, she sat outside under the neem tree, her torn sandals beside her, reading an old literature book lent to her by the school librarian. She didn't see Chike watching her from across the compound. Chike has always admired Amara in secret and from afar, never having the courage to speak to her, but always moved by her determination. Chike and Amara attended the same high school. He was a senior in their school. He was equally a brilliant student. He met Amara in one of the competitions they went to. He was thrilled with the way she carried herself, with so much grace. They immediately became friends. He was not from an affluent background either, but makes little money from tutoring. He ran into Amara along the school road one Thursday morning on their way to school. Amara blushed at his greeting and smiled. She also admired him for his intelligence and hard-working nature. Her smile faded as quickly as it was formed, and he asked her what the problem was. Amara opened up to him saying, "I may have to drop out after this week. My school fees have not been paid, and the principal is not having it this time." Without hesitation, Chick stopped by the principal's office the next day, being Friday, and paid her school fees. When the principal asked him why he was doing that, he replied, "She is too bright to drop out." In amazement, the principal replied, "I shall do well to inform Amara and her parents about your kind gesture." But Chike told the principal not to mention it to anyone. If asked, he could say a sponsor volunteered to any outstanding fees of the best students in the school. This went on and on. Neither Amara nor her parents knew it was Chike. They believed it was a sponsor and remained grateful to this sponsor. Amara finally graduated from high school and gained admission into one of the universities to study business administration. She was in her early 20s. While she was doing well academically, she struggled financially and in her romantic life. Although she was growing into a stunning woman, her romantic life was marked by a string of heartbreaks. She had loved sincerely, too sincerely. Men came for her beauty, not her soul. She was not lucky in her relationships. It has been from one chaotic relationship to another. The men she dated either were not faithful and committed, or they were obsessed with the need to control. Some promised her the world, but left her broken instead. Life began to test Amara's spirit in deeper ways. Each relationship ended with a new scar, and her friends urged her to use what she had to get what she wanted. Some of them chased wealthy men, traded affection for status, and lived wild lives she could never bring herself to imitate. Amara cried often at night, asking God if virtue was worth it in a world that rewarded otherwise. She always wished her university had the kind of sponsor her high school had, so that she wouldn't have to worry about paying her tuition fees. Sometimes she imagined what it would be like to live wild, like her friend Lila. Lilia is rich, and she has everything she wants. Amara knew Lila's money was from the numerous men in her life. Arg! Snap out of it, Amara. She said to herself, "Remember what mommy always says. I am doing well, too. I may not be rich, but I am a virtuous bloom. Focus, girl." She cheered herself. Amara owned a small business in school. She loved fashion designing, so she made and sold beautiful clothes. Despite owning a business, she still struggled financially because it wasn't so easy for her to maintain her good grades and make so many clothes at the same time. So she makes more clothes during the holidays and school breaks. She had so many customers thanks to her excellent customer service skills. One of the guys Amara met was Toby. She met him during her second year at university. He was charming, eloquent, and came from a wealthy background. "You deserve to be treated like royalty," he'd whisper, taking her to parties and buying her things she could never afford. She didn't feel so comfortable with the gesture, so she politely declined the gifts. This often makes Toby upset. One evening, she and Toby hung out. She sat in a cafe, stirring her drink as Toby leaned back smugly. "Babe, I just feel like you're too focused on your career. I mean, what's the point of all that stress when I can take care of everything? I don't want to be taken care of," Amara said, her voice firm. "I want to contribute, to build something of my own." He rolled his eyes. "You're too stubborn. Most girls would kill for this life." "I'm not most girls," Amara replied. "Is this why you reject the gifts I give to you? To prove you are something more?" Toby asked her. She looked into Toby's eyes and told him she had noticed he began to drift when she wouldn't sleep with him or depend on him for everything. That did not sit well with her. Toby dismissed her feelings and told her to quit being too uptight. Later that week, she told her friend Leela about the breakup. "You and these morals," Leela scoffed. "You think all this virtue talk puts food on the table? I'd rather eat gari in peace than steak in fear," Amara said quietly. Another guy she met after Toby came Segun. He swore he wanted a wife and kids, but only if she gave up her career dreams. Her relationship with Segun ended after 1 month. She met Ebuka. Ebuka checked everything on her list, except that he was not interested in marriage. He wanted to keep Amara and continue having affairs with other girls. She walked out of this relationship as well. The cycle of bad relationships continued throughout her university days. She had always believed that she would find her true love at the university. Only the kind of men she met was the problem. Her best friend Lila scoffed. "Girl, stop acting like a saint. Men are to be used before they use you. I still feel Toby was the guy for you. Girl, he was rich and was going to give you a good life. He only had a small request and you chickened out." Amara smiled softly. "If I have to become someone else to find love, then maybe it's not love I'm meant to find." Lila rolled her eyes. "Suit yourself. I'll be driving a Benz while you quote Proverbs." Years passed, and Amara is now a full-fledged adult. She focused on her business and was doing well for herself. Her friend Lila had traveled to Scotland with her husband. Amara kept hope alive and was happy for her friend. They kept in touch. Lila sent her lots and lots of pictures and videos. Lila also patronized Amara. She was one of Amara's biggest clients. One day at the supermarket, Amara ran into Mrs. Okonjo, her high school principal's wife. She and Amara had chatted for hours. She learned Amara was into fashion design and she became one of Amara's clients. Amara was surprised to see Mrs. Okonjo in the city. She explained she came for a mugwo as one of her daughters had delivered a bouncing baby boy. Amara was elated to hear this news and decided to pay a visit. It was during this visit that Mrs. Okonjo revealed the mysterious sponsor who was secretly paying her tuition fees in high school. Amara was taken aback. Her heart felt warm as she remembered Chike. She hadn't spoken to him for years. One day, after a long day's work, Amara was scrolling through her phone and fate gently knocked on her door in the form of a message on social media. From Chike, her quiet high school schoolmate. He had always kept to himself, shy, bookish, never drawing attention. Chike had studied in the UK through a scholarship. He still liked Amara. Their conversations were warm, filled with old memories and new laughter. She discovered that he returned to Nigeria 4 months ago and lived in the city now. He had started a tech business and never married. Some part of her felt a deep relief knowing Chike was still single. She prayed earnestly that he would like her and ask her out. What she didn't know until much later was that Chike had always loved her from afar. The chemistry between them sparked and there was no going back from there. The reconnection with Chike was gentle, almost like rain returning to a dry field. There was no pressure, just conversation and laughter that felt like balm to her wounded heart. In one of their dinner dates, Amara asked Chike why he'd never mentioned to her he was the secret sponsor who always paid her high tuition. Chike was astounded and asked her how she found out. "Chike, you will have to answer my question first," she said, giggling. He smiled at her and repeated what he had told the principal. "Amara, you were too bright to drop out of school." Amara couldn't help but blush. She held her tummy tickling. She must have felt the butterflies in her tummy. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. "I couldn't say anything then. I didn't want you to feel obligated," he replied. "You gave me my future," she said, her voice shaking. "No," he replied. "You took your future and made it beautiful. I just helped keep the door open." Soft tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were of gratitude. Chike reached for hand across the table. She gave a soft smile and he wiped off her tears. He visited soon after, and in the way he looked at her, like she was poetry written into flesh, Amara finally felt seen. After dating for 2 years, Amara said yes to Chike's marriage proposal. Chike proposed to Amara in the most beautiful and romantic way. He made a special reservation at the favorite restaurant, had red roses set up around their table, ordered one of the expensive drinks at the restaurant, and while Amara was going through the menu, he went down on one knee and popped the question, "Will you marry me?" They married in a small, joyful ceremony. He loved her gently, stood by her fiercely, and never let a day pass without reminding her how precious she was to him. Yet another trial waited. Children did not come. Years passed. Tests, treatments, and prayers. Friends began to whisper. Some gave pitying looks. Others told her to seek other options. Neighbors suggesting different prayer houses, spiritual churches, and strong prophets. Each month brought fresh disappointment. Amara grew quiet. Her friends, now mothers, stopped inviting her to baby showers. Her faith wavered. One night, she collapsed into Chiki's arms and said to him, "Maybe I'm broken." "No," he whispered, holding her tightly. "You're whole, with or without children." "I can't do this anymore, Chik," she sobbed. "Everyone's moving on with their lives, with their babies." Chike knelt before her, cupping her face. "Look at me. We're not defined by what we lack. I love you, child or no child. You're my everything. I feel like I'm failing you," she said. "You could never fail me. This isn't a test. It's a journey. And I'm walking every step with you." Cheek replied. But in her heart, she still prayed. Every night, every tear falling like an offering. Chick never wavered. "If it's just you and me forever, I'm already fulfilled," he would say. Then, after nearly a decade of waiting, a miracle unfolded. When the doctor finally said, "You're pregnant and there are 3 heartbeats," Amara and Chiki stared at each other in disbelief. "3?" Chike choked. She stared at the scan screen, then at Chik. "Triplets?" she gasped. Amara burst into laughter and tears all at once. "God really said double for my trouble, and added 1 more." She cradled her stomach, not 1, but 3. Triplets. Chike laughed. "You see, when God answers, he does so in 3s. That night, she tried contacting her friend Lila after a long time, but to no avail. Years later, Amara watched her children playing in their backyard. Their backyard was a small slice of heaven. 3 toddlers, Nia, Zuri, and Kachi, tumbled over themselves, chasing bubbles. Chike watched, his arm draped protectively around Amara's shoulder. Her heart brimmed with peace. She often thought of her old friends, some now divorced, some struggling to find peace in the paths they chose. Chasing fleeting pleasures, she remembered their taunts, their advice, the easy shortcuts she never took. And she gave thanks for her parents, for Chike, for her strength, and for choosing virtue in a world that tried to seduce her otherwise. Lila visited one afternoon, wearing dark glasses and sadness in her eyes. Amara was surprised. She told Lila how hard she had tried to connect with her through all social media platforms and had called her phone lines but couldn't reach her. Lila indulged Amara about everything that had happened in her life over the years. How she got divorced twice, lost her businesses. "I ruined everything," Lila muttered. "I chased shiny things, and now I'm alone." Amara placed a hand on hers. "You're not beyond grace. You can still start over." After Lila left, Amara sat on a bench, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, watching her family. The golden sun dipped low, painting everything with peace. She thought of how her past felt distant now, like a painful song whose tune she remembered but no longer sang. In the quiet of the evening, Amara whispered a prayer, not asking for anything this time, just saying, "Thank you." Later that night, as the kids slept and the house was quiet, Amara leaned into Chiki's arms, looked him in the eyes, and said, "Thank you for waiting for me, for believing." Chiki kissed her forehead and said to her, "You were always worth the wait, every second." She nodded, her heart full, and for the first time in her life, she didn't wonder what was next. She simply breathed, smiled, and gave thanks. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning into my channel. I hope you enjoyed this story. Click the subscribe button and notification bell to get notified every time we upload a new story.